to Z Mysteries, Super Edition 4, Sleepy Hollow Sleepover by Ron Roy. Chapter 4. Officer Clever flicked the reins, and the horse and wagon began to move again. Minutes later, they came to a wide clearing in the woods. Small lights hung in the trees. Dink could see two other hay wagons parked off to the side. The horses had been unhitched and were grazing. A police cruiser was parked not far from the wagons. The shiny chrome gleamed in the moonlight. Dink saw a lot of other kids in the clearing. Some wore full costumes, but most just had on masks and were dressed in jeans and sweaters. He noticed several men and women, all wearing masks or costumes. He saw an Elvis, a clown, and a Humpty Dumpty. He figured they were police officers, too. They were setting up games and placing food on two long tables. Officer Clever hopped off the wagon. "Okay, kids, jump down," he said. "We've got games and tons of food, and later there'll be a bonfire." He grinned. "Anyone who doesn't have fun tonight gets arrested." The 6 kids clambered down off the wagon. They wiped hay from their hair and clothing, put on their masks, then ran toward the lights. "Look," Josh said. He pointed to a group of kids gathered around a boy who had been blindfolded. He was holding a picture of a man's face. "They're playing Pin the Head on the Headless Horseman," Ruth Rose said. The blindfolded boy staggered forward. Attached to a tree was a picture of a horse with a headless rider. Everyone in the group laughed when the boy completely missed the tree. One of the police officers whispered something in the boy's ear, then aimed him in the right direction. The police officer was dressed as a spaceman. Another group of kids were standing around a barrel of water, dunking for apples. Other kids were lawn bowling. Instead of bowling balls, they used small pumpkins. "Ruth Rose, can I borrow your phone?" Dink asked. "I'd better call my dad." Ruth Rose dug her cell phone out of her pocket and handed it to Dink. He dialed. "Hi, Dad," he said a few seconds later. "Yeah, we're here, and it's awesome. We got attacked by bats and witches and dead guys crawling out of graves. Oh, and our driver's head fell off. I love this place." Dink pushed the button to end the call. He handed the phone back to Ruth Rose. "What do you guys want to do?" he asked. "Feed me," Josh said. "I smell hot dogs." "I want to dunk for apples," Ruth Rose said. "I'll see you guys in a little while." She headed for the apple dunkers. "You coming to eat?" Josh asked Dink. "Not right now," Dink said. "I think I'll try that bowling with pumpkins. It looks like fun." "Okay, I'll be at the hot dog table," Josh said, grinning. "That looks like fun." "Don't eat too many," Dink warned. "How many is too many?" Josh asked. Dink laughed. "For you, I'd say about 20, he said. Josh made a goofy face at Dink and jogged toward the food. Dink lowered his mask and walked up to a police officer who seemed to be in charge of the pumpkin bowling. The man wore filthy rags and a mask that looked like rotting flesh. "Hi," Dink said. "Are you the guy from the grave?" The man lifted his mask away from his face. "I sure am," he said. "But I'm really Officer Riley. Did I scare you?" Dink nodded. "Half to death," he said. "How'd you get here so fast?" Officer Riley pointed to where the cruiser was parked. "As soon as your wagon left, I jumped in and drove here." "Can I bowl?" Dink asked. "Sure," Officer Riley said. "Just grab a pumpkin from that pile over there and get in line." Dink walked over to the pumpkin pile. He chose a round one, figuring it would roll better. Holding his pumpkin, Dink stepped in the line of kids waiting to bowl. The kid in front of him was Adam from the hayride. "Hey," Dink said. "Have you ever done this before?" Adam turned around and smiled at Dink. "Yeah, my brother and I did it last year. It's crazy. Your pumpkin goes wobbling all over the place." But you only get a prize if you knock over that little ghost statue. Adam pointed. There are prizes? Dink said. Yup, last year I won a little monster that glowed in the dark, Adam said. It took me 4 tries. Pretty soon it was Adam's turn to bowl. He stepped up to a rope lying on the grass. With one toe on the rope, Adam tossed his pumpkin using both hands. His pumpkin rolled off into the bushes, missing the ghost statue by 5 feet. The other kids in line all laughed. Adam laughed too, and ran after his pumpkin. Officer Riley pointed to Dink. Your turn, he said. Good luck. Dink decided to try something he'd seen Josh do once when they were in a real bowling alley. He walked up to the rope, but then he turned around so he was facing away from the statue. You're bowling backward? Some other kid asked. How are you gonna see where your pumpkin is going? Holding his pumpkin in both hands, Dink bent over and looked backward through his legs. He could see the statue clearly, but upside down. Then he aimed his pumpkin and hurled it through his legs. It shot straight toward the statue. But at the last second, the pumpkin hit a rock or a bump and flew off in another direction. You almost made it, kid, Officer Riley said. Dink lifted his mask and chased after his pumpkin. It had rolled into some bushes growing between a bunch of trees. He finally found the pumpkin in some weeds. As Dink picked it up, he heard a voice somewhere ahead of him. He looked up and saw 2 dark figures over by the wagons and horses. Even though the moon shone down on them, Dink couldn't make out the men's faces. They must be more cops, and they're wearing masks, Dink thought. The men were patting the horses and talking to them. Dink noticed something shiny on the ground where the men's feet were. When one of the men moved, the shiny things moved too. Dink wondered if there were fireflies here at the end of October. Dink grabbed his pumpkin and trotted back to the clearing. He got in line behind a girl in a Miss Piggy mask. Before it was time for him to bowl again, Josh appeared, chomping on a hot dog. Dink, come on, they're starting the bonfire, Josh said. Dink put his pumpkin back on the pile and followed Josh. The cops had made a circle of tree stumps for the kids to sit on. In the middle, they had piled logs and dry tree branches. An officer lit the pile, and soon it was crackling. Dink and Josh found Ruth Rose, and the 3 sat on stumps. Did you get an apple? Dink asked her. Yup, and I ate it, she said. The neck of her sweater and the tips of her hair were wet. The officer, dressed as Elvis, passed out marshmallows and pointy sticks. Wait till the flames die down, he instructed. It took about 5 minutes for the dry wood and branches to burn down. Dink, Josh, and Ruth Rose left their masks on the stumps and stepped up to the fire. They reached toward the coals with their marshmallow sticks. Guess how many marshmallows I can fit in my mouth at the same time, Josh said. 100, Dink said. He watched his marshmallow to see that it didn't get too burned. Nope, 17, Josh said. I did it at the twins' birthday party last year. Mom was grossed out. It was so cool. Well, don't do it here, Ruth Rose said. I don't want to be embarrassed. Just then, a girl on the other side of the circle yelled, Oh my gosh, look! Everyone stared at her. No one knew what she was yelling about. No, over there, the girl cried. She pointed into the woods where Dink had chased his pumpkin. Through the trees, they could all see flames shooting into the sky. The hay wagons are burning, one of the officers yelled.